Welcome to the Old Fashioned Real Estate Show. My name is Jeffrey Holst, and that can
Brian
you point?
Leverage.
Yeah, can you point at me, Brian? Sort of. Nice. It actually takes a lot of skill to point in Zoom and
The opposite direction.
Yeah, because it's not mirrored and stuff. But anyway, I'm super excited about today's episode. How do you feel, Brian?
Pretty pumped.
Why is that?
Well, it's 2021, right? It's first show of the year that we are recording, even though it'll come out.
It'll also be the first show of the year that comes out.
Yes, which makes sense, of course. So it's been a good week thus far. I'm sure a lot of people are happy to get 2020 in the rearview mirror for all the obvious reasons. But I think, and I'm really excited about our guest.
Yeah, me too. We have one of my good friends on the show today, Barri Griffiths. And hopefully I said his name right, or he'll be saying, you're not really my good friend. We're going to go with Barri 10-foot, actually. Barri 10-foot on the show today. And we're going to bring him on right after this.
Welcome to the Old Fashioned Real Estate Show, where hosts Brian Leverage and Jeffrey Holst for our old fashioned real estate advice.
Look how we look.
Boom.
Barri, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on the show, and that was quite the introduction video or whatever. How long did it take you guys to film that?
Yeah, not very long, but we did. Although it is Brian's hand shaking the glass, and it's his brother doing the voiceover. So
okay, it looks good. I like it. Yeah.
Well,
so how are you guys doing?
I'm
good. Yeah. We're happy to be here. Happy to have you with us. I'm starting off the new year without COVID, so
that's always a good start, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you recovered, Brian. For people that didn't, catch this before, Brian's had COVID, and now he's recovered. So we're back in the saddle, so to speak, recording. We're still being socially distant, and the good news is we're able to do this stuff over the internet. So that's awesome. And if you haven't had a chance to, you can go check out our Christmas episode where we talked about our goals for last year and the things that we accomplished. And Brian and I are going to have to do a goal episode coming up, I think, in the next couple of weeks, because we didn't get to do one because of his COVID. So that's going to happen. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about Barri, because Barri is one of the most interesting people that I've met during the time of COVID. That's true. He's shaking his head like, no, I'm not that interesting. But it's true. You are really, it's so true. You're like one of the most extraordinary people I know. I mean, listen, I don't know, Brian, I don't know how much you know about Barri's story, but Barri, like, you grew up in a really big town, right? I mean, like a really big town. Is that fair?
There was at least 200 people that lived where I lived. Yeah, so that's pretty big, right?
That's huge. So where did you grow up? Like take us to how you got on the show. Like tell me everything important for our viewers to know about how you ended up where you are right now.
Okay. That's easy. So I grew up in a very small town. I consider this to be a small town, 200 people. And I don't know even if there was 200 people. And just to give you some context of what this small town was like, there was a fish and chip shop, there was a post office, there was a grocery store, and there was 3 pubs. And there was also my dad's business as well, so a construction/undertaking business, which we can get into if you guys.
Well, there's some synergies there.
Yeah. There was. So it's actually interesting. So the reason, my great grandfather started the business probably about 100 years ago now, and they used to make the wheels for the horse and carriage. So they make the wood. They were woodworkers making the wheels. So because they were woodworkers, they made the coffins as well, because everyone had made coffins. You're talking 100 years ago now, right? 1920. So imagine the times back then, especially back in Wales. So they made the works and they made the coffins. So it made sense that they were also the undertakers. So that's kind of where that started, and it was passed down all the generations. And I actually worked as an undertaker for a little bit myself as well.
Okay, so you started out as an undertaker, and then you just became
and
a
then so I started Undertaker, and then wanted more from my life, right? I don't know why or what it was, but I wanted more than this small little town. Always dreamed of more, always thought of more, and I was, always kind of open to that possibility. And I was working out, going to the gym, doing all that stuff, and I was like, what can I do with this? Like, I'm training every day. I don't really drink as much as I used to. Still drunk, but I want to do something with my life, right? And one day wrestling came on TV, and I was like, wow, I think I can do that. Like, I'm pretty athletic, I'm tall, I'm big, or whatever. I think that's something I can do. So I kind of pursued that. And just like, sort of talk about the law of attraction, or sort of being open to opportunities. A couple of months later, a small wrestling show came to my town. So I went to that show, met the promoter, started training with him, wrestled all over the UK, and then got signed to the WWE in 2009, moved over to Tampa in 2010. 2011 made my debut on TV. Wrestled on Monday, what they call Monday Night Raw, which is probably in front of 5 million people watching at home. Wrestled on TV, wrestled on pay-per-views, traveled the world, did a lot of cool stuff. And then in 2014, that kind of came to an end. Was still wrestling a little bit out, all over the world, and then got a gig with Cirque du Soleil in 2015. Moved out to Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been here ever since. And then where real estate fits in all of this, if we're going there, is that in 2014, when my wrestling career kind of came to an end, I had an expensive house that I needed to keep because I wanted to keep it because I loved it. So I found, went down. I was what they call an accidental landlord, right? had to find how to screen a tenant, find a tenant, how to be a property manager, how to do all that stuff, and that opened the world of real estate investing for me. And then fast forward, I bought some single families, and now focused on multifamily.
Nice. Brian, what do you think?
Well, no. So, what was your stage name for our audience?
Mason Ryan was my stage name. It wasn't anything crazy and exciting because they wouldn't really let you do anything at that time. At that time, UFC, this was 2010, so UFC was huge and just gotten really huge at that time. So they were felt like they were competing against them. So they didn't want you to be like Barber the Brutus the Barber Beefcake, or
or the Undertaker,
Hulk Hogan, or, the Undertaker, the Ultimate Warrior, the Honky Tonk Man. All those crazy names. They didn't want that anymore, so they wanted you to be more like a real person. So I had to come up with my name like a real person name. So Mason Ryan.
Well, it also sounds like you could have worked in the CIA with that name. But no. So what was it? So you had to rent the house you were living in out of necessity. It sounds like, right? So tell us about how that went.
Yeah, that was, so what happened was, obviously WWE didn't renew my contract, so all of a sudden I've gone now from making great money, living a great life, thinking that I've got a certain trajectory in life, going to be, I thought I was going to be the world heavyweight champion, to be honest. I say this story a few times, but my plan A was to be the world heavyweight champion, plan B was to be the world heavyweight champion, and plan C was to be the world heavyweight champion. Obviously that didn't materialize, but I didn't have anything else lined up, right? I wasn't looking for anything else. So when I bought this house thinking I was going to be, around for a long time, it was an expensive house, and with an expensive house came an expensive mortgage. So when that, stopped making that good money, and once you're outside of WWE, you don't really make good money other places. It's hard to make a good living as a wrestler outside of the WWE. So I realized I wanted to keep this house because I bought the house as an emotional buy. It was no investing behind it whatsoever. It wasn't like, oh, this rents for so much. This is this is a great investment. No, I love the house. I love where it was and all that. But I couldn't sell the house because I couldn't bring myself to do it because I just bought the house in January of this year. And then in April of that year, that's when everything came crashing down. So I was like, all right, I can't, mentally, I couldn't do that. So I had to keep a hold of the house. So, I went, and I didn't understand anything whatsoever at that time. So I was just trying to figure out how to rent it, and how to get someone in. And the problem was, I couldn't get someone in for the mortgage I was paying either. I couldn't. So I was actually, negative cash flow. But I was okay with that to start off with, really, because I just wanted to keep the house. I was like, all right, if I eat $200 a month and I get to keep the house, it's worth it in the long term. So I did that, and it was like, it was good because the mortgage payment was $2,550, and then they were paying $2,300 the tenants. So you're getting a certain class of tenant, and this is 7 years ago now. So you're getting a certain type of tenant for that price, right? That's almost a screening process in itself, right? There's only a certain amount of So it was a good experience in terms of they always paid on time, they took care of the place, anything need fixing, they kind of helped with that. So it was pretty smooth, my first experience as a landlord, to be honest with you. And kind of has helped me like think. I always like better properties, and I know everyone does to some extent, but it really does pay off, I feel like, to some extent, to have better properties because you get better tenants. And then I bought a townhome here in Las Vegas, same kind of situation, not nowhere near as expensive, but in a great area of town. Like, we fixed up the property nice, and we had the tenant, and the tenant took care of so much stuff for us. Like, literally anything that breaks, she had she ran her own business, so she had all kinds of friends that could do all kinds of stuff. So anything that would break or need fixing, she would call in a favor from a friend, and then she would just take it out the rent, and we wouldn't even have to do anything.
So is she looking for a new landlord? Because
yeah,
she's probably move her into one of my places.
Well, she eventually moved out. I think we eventually sold it, and then so when a lease was up, we said, hey, we're going to sell because the price had gone up enough. This was last year. Was it last year? 2019. So that's not last. It feels like last year, but it's technically not anymore because we're in 2021. So it got up enough, and it went up more. But I was happy with it. I was going to take my chips off the table, and plus I wanted to be in multifamily because my goal initially was to get to 40 single family homes. Right? Yeah. Probably hear this all the time, right? How scalable is getting to 40 single family homes, right? It is doable, but in Las Vegas, when at the time as well, I was looking to buy with all traditional financing, so my plan was to buy 3 a year, 3 with 20% down and 1 with like owner occupied, right? So, and the 10-year time horizon, but soon realized that's, I was trying to save every last penny I had, figure out where all that money was going to be, and like all this other stuff, right? And someone just blew my mind one day and said, hey, you can buy a 40-unit apartment complex and you don't necessarily have to use all your own money to buy it. And I was like, wait, what? So I was hooked at that point, and then just really dived down the multifamily rabbit hole, I guess.
Yeah, we've all experienced that.
The scaling issue. Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, I was going to say I started down the road myself, as I think, like you alluded to, most of us do. And I used to think the same thing. You're going, there's really not much difference between having 30 houses in a 30-unit apartment building. But then when you get to 30 houses, you go, no, absolutely, there is a big difference. So that's what I started thinking.
Easier to manage a 30-unit apartment building, right? Because it's just in one place, and you don't have to coordinate all this other different.
Yeah, you got one roof. You get a lot of economies of scale, with multifamily that you don't necessarily get with houses. Jeff may argue against that, as I see he's no.
I'm just gonna mute him. So no, because I'm getting a little echo, but so the thing for me is that the multifamily stuff, yeah, I agree with Brian, actually. I'm not going to argue against him. It's like the economies of scale are so great, and it's a little bit harder to buy a 30-unit building than it is to buy a single family house, but it's not 30 times as hard. And so to me, like, if you want to scale, like you want 40 units, you could buy 40 individual houses. And I, by the way, have done that. That's how I got my first 40 units. But if you want to really, really grow quickly, you really need to be looking at multifamily. I tell people all the time, the biggest mistake I made was not starting real estate investing soon enough. But the second biggest mistake was not getting in multifamily soon enough. So how many single family houses did you have when you decided that you were going to transition to multifamily?
Yeah, I only had 3, so it wasn't a large portfolio, but I had a good amount of equity in all of them. So I had that house in Florida that I became an accidental landlord I kept, and then I bought a townhome that was a rental, and then I bought an owner-occupied property that I was going to turn into a rental. But at the time, that had just gone up so much. I'm in Las Vegas, so the appreciation over the last few years in Las Vegas has just been nuts, right? It's just crazy. So I just wanted to take that, I wanted to take the equity off the table. And I lived in that primary as well, residence, 2 of them for 2 of the last 5 years, so I didn't have to pay any capital gains on those properties. So, that was a bonus as well. So I was able to take a good amount of equity and have that ready to invest in something else.
So let's talk about that just for people that maybe don't know. So you said you didn't have to pay capital gains. It's not because they didn't go up. It's because there's a tax exemption for personal residents, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. So the house in Las Vegas, not the one in Florida, the house in Las Vegas I lived in, and I think I'm not a CPA. I'm not like giving tax advice or anything like that. But I believe if you live in the two of the last 5 years, your capital gains exempt, right? You don't have to pay capital gains.
Right, to a certain extent. I mean, I think there's
250 for single filers.
Right. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. And 500,000 for married.
Yeah.
And then you can use that exemption only once every 2 years, and you have to have owned it at least 2 out of the last 5 and lived in it at least 2 out of the last 5. Interesting side note, they don't have to be concurrent. So if you rent a house for 2 years and then buy it, move out the next day, and then own it for 2 years, you can still file the exemption. At least that's my understanding. And like you said, Barry, we're not CPAs either. So, but that's how I understand it. And it's fascinating stuff. So then you didn't have to do a 1031. You just got a pile of cash. So you started buying multifamily at that point in Las Vegas because that's where you live and that's what you do?
So the funny story on the 1031 exchange, for anyone who doesn't know, and I learned the hard lesson. I sold that townhome, and my goal was to do a 1031 and do an exchange into a multifamily property. So sold the property, called up my intermediary into 1031 intermediary, and said, "Hey, sold my property. I'm ready to do my 1031." He goes, "Wait, you've sold your property?" I said, "Yeah, I've sold it." Said, I can't help you then. I'm afraid.
Yeah. So talk to an intermediary first is the rule that you're saying. And we did a whole episode on this, which apparently you didn't watch, Barry. And we'll put that Brian point up because it's going to be on your side. Yeah, it's going to be right above Brian. That's up. Yeah, that's right. We'll put that in the video there so you can find that without trouble. But anyway, so you then so you got the money. You couldn't do the 1031. So you paid whatever taxes you had to owe, and then you started buying multifamily with the money.
Yeah, I bought multifamily. I bought in Cincinnati because at the time Vegas prices would just keep going up, and it was just really competitive. And that's not to say you couldn't find deals here, but I just didn't like the cycles that you have here, right? The market cycles you have in Vegas, the swings are a lot bigger. So I wanted something a lot more stable. So I chose Cincinnati in the Midwest because I always heard about the cash flow in the Midwest. So I ended up buying 6 units. I was looking for something much bigger, to be honest, more like 20 units, but this 6 unit came up and it was a great deal. And it just needed complete interior renovation, some exterior work as well. But the rents were on average around $575, I think. Average rents now are about $1,250.
Oh, wow.
So you doubled the value. Nice.
Yeah.
Good work.
Idea. I bought it for $300. Probably I'll end up. I have still ongoing now. Probably put in $100, and then it's going to be worth maybe $650. So
that's amazing. Yeah, good work.
Well,
so that's
$1,250 a month in rent and a $650 value when it's done.
Yeah.
But your gross is 70, close to $8,000, I guess, actually.
Gross is $7,000 a month. Yeah.
Oh, it's 6. Yeah, my bad. So
yeah. So that's that's great. So this is really interesting, actually. This is actually extraordinary, if you want to know. I would never buy a 6-unit building in Cincinnati. Like, I wouldn't do it because I'd be afraid to buy 6 units in a market I'm not familiar with. So that takes some serious guts. But it's worked out well for you.
Stupidity, I guess.
Well, I mean, look.
Why'd you choose Cincinnati out of other, say, Midwestern cities that you could have invested in, possibly?
Yeah, and I've got to correct myself. So average rent is $1,200, sorry, and the gross is $7,205. So I used to use the calculator because I was like, wait a minute, I got to check my math there. So what happened was I have a real estate coach. His name's Joe Fairless. He owns a lot of properties. So I realized, like, as I was looking at deals, and I was like, even looking at deals here in Vegas, and I was like, this is a 20-unit deal, and it was so big to me at the time, right? And 20 units is still 20 units, but it was seemed like 200 units to me. And I, met the brokers there, toured the property, and I was like looking to buy it. And I was like, Jesus, this is just so scary to me right now. Like, I don't I don't know anything, right? I'd been trying to research and learn and stuff like that, but I was like, there's so much stuff I don't know here. So I took a step back and I was like, I need to find a coach. I need someone to guide me through this. I need someone to kind of hold my hand. So I came across Joe Fearless. He was, he was a lot cheaper in coaching now than he was back then, I think. But I liked Joe. I liked him as a person. I like kind of his vibe, I guess, and everything else like that. And obviously, he's very successful in what he does. So as I was talking about my dilemma about which markets, where he says, well, if you're looking in the Midwest, why don't you look at Cincinnati? That's where I live. And, I don't really invest here. I invest in Dallas. But in terms of what you're looking for stability, it sounds like Cincinnati would be a great market. So dived in a little bit, look at, population growth, job growth. They have good job diversity. There's a lot of like this. I think there's 7 of the 500 companies.
Fortune 5.
Yeah, Fortune 500 companies. There's a lot of healthcare there, which obviously is, kind of.
Yeah, I think Procter and Gamble is there too, are they?
Yeah, Procter and Gamble is there. Kroger is there. Amazon is making a hub there, a transport hub there as well. So there's some good stuff that's happening there. So it just made sense. And when I started looking at deals there, I was like, wow, okay, the numbers make way more sense here, and there's a lot more of that smaller product there as well. Here in Vegas, there's not that much of the, say 10 to 30 or 40 units.
And so what did that what that 20 unit in Vegas, how much were they asking for?
Oh, man, I wish I'd have bought it. I think they were asking at the time 1.7, but this is like 3 years ago now. I wish I'd have bought that. It was like,
it's probably worth 3 now, right?
55, yeah. Oh my God, it's like probably double now at least. Yeah. And like it was in a kind of a rough area, but yeah, I wish I'd have bought everything I could have back then, and I would have been absolute, because rents, I think Vegas has like the second highest rent growth in the nation after somewhere in California for the last 2 years, along with massive appreciation on single family homes. So everything's just been going up here. So I really do wish I'd have bought everything back then. But going back to your question, I think you were asking like about investing out of state, right? I don't know. I think I've read and listened to so many podcasts about people doing it that it didn't scare me so much. Like I would rather have invested in Vegas, but it just didn't seem to make sense. And I knew to be successful, that's what it took. So I flew out there. I didn't just buy sight and seeing. I flew out there, met with property managers, met with brokers, drove the city. So I did that. I did that 2 or 3 times actually before I ended up making my first offer, and I probably ended up being there 4 or 5 times before I actually bought this property. So, and I built a team of people. You hear it all the time, right? If you build a good team of people, it's not so scary because you can leverage their skills and what they do.
See, I think that's the smart thing that you did, because that's really the trick, right? Like, I mean, Brian did essentially the same thing. In reality, he was living in California when he started investing here in Chattanooga.
So,
so he was in a similar situation. He's looking at the world and going, this doesn't make sense to invest here. Where can I invest? And he picked a city based on the job growth and things like that, and ended up settling in Chattanooga. And now he lives in Chattanooga. So does that mean Barry's going to move to Cincinnati soon? Or?
No, there's no way. There's no way I can live there. It's like, Cincinnati's a cool city, don't get me wrong, but I lived in Wales for 28 years of my life. I'm done with crappy weather. Like I lived in Tampa, Florida, and I live in Las Vegas now. So I'm cool with either Florida.
If anything, you're going to go closer to the equator.
Yeah, I can live on one of these Caribbean islands, but outside of that,
well, I hear tell that Mason Ryan is very famous in the Dominican Republic. So you can go hang out there, and just people will follow you around and ask for your autograph.
Maybe. They watch a lot of the old wrestling there. I think there's a lot of old wrestling that's re-shown there. So yeah, if I go there on vacation, I get, funnily enough, even though I've been out of wrestling now for 6 or 7 years, they still get recognized.
So you're being, you've shown some success at investing out of market, which is actually not the easiest thing to do, just for the aforementioned reasons, by not having a good team in place. But it sounds like you've had great success with your 6 unit. And are you, have you sort of refinance it, or is that to come, or you're going to sell and look to do an exchange into something else? Or?
Yeah, an exchange. Yeah. So hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll have all 6 units renovated and have, new tenants in all. And there's 2 that's still, one is nearly finished. So it's a matter of getting a tenant in and then starting the other one. But that doesn't need a lot of work. So yeah, definitely to sell. I thought about doing a cash out refinance, but the property is like 120 years old, so there's going to be a lot more maintenance, and it's in a historic district as well. That was a painful lesson I learned in terms of it has box guttering, and that box guttering was so expensive to replace because it needed replacing. So you have to replace it with what's already there in the historic district. So if I say the windows need to be replaced at any point in time, I'm going to have to replace them with the exact same windows that they have, and so it gets costly. It cost me $12,000, $6,000 each side for guttering. So that was not fun conversation.
Yeah, well, that's
so the goal is to sell and kind of get out. Even though it's a great area in terms of it's just outside of Cincinnati, an area called Covington, which is really up and coming. It's about 15 minutes from downtown Cincinnati, and it's really a cool area. But I don't want to be in that deal with that historic area stuff unless it's a screaming deal again. But this deal, if I was to cash out refinance, I wouldn't be necessarily cash flowing a great deal and to hold on to something like that. So the goal is to do a 1031, involve the intermediaries this time, don't touch the money, and find something, maybe around 40 units this time.
That's a great plan.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll see, right? But that's the goal. And buy something a little bit more stabilized because, obviously a lot of my money is tied up in this deal, and I don't want to have a lot of money to have to then put in a renovation project, because then if you're talking 40 units and they all need, $5,000 worth of work, you're obviously talking a lot more money with something like that. So I'd rather buy, something 40 units, but maybe something that has a lot of loss to lease. I can burn off the loss to lease and create some value there. Maybe some operational stuff with expenses as well, where I'm able to decrease that and just kind of, you always want a value add, right? You don't really want just a stabilized turnkey property unless it's cash flowing a ton already. You want to create that value, right? So that, because I don't want to be done. Even say I buy 40 units, right? I'd rather turn that 40 units then into 60 or 70 units, right? And then turn that, what I mean? Like, that snowball effect.
Yeah, to buy something that's stabilized.
Yeah. So you know what I think? I think, Barry, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have you back on the show in I don't know, a couple of weeks or so, and you can ask us questions about what we think you should invest in. What do you think about that? You want to do another show?
For sure, absolutely. And I want to touch on something very quick, and I'll touch on what we talked about before. But there's been 2 times in my life where it's been not lost my job, but had to, felt like I was starting over. The first time, as I mentioned, was when it happened with WWE, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. That's where real estate really came in, right? I found about real estate, and I realized I needed a plan B. Well, fast forward to 2020 when COVID hit, and my work for Cirque du Soleil, the show closed down, didn't know what my future held, right? What was going to come next. I had a son, I had a wife, I had all this things to consider. It was nothing like the first time around because I had real estate, and that was an amazing feeling. And that's why I'm so passionate about real estate, because I think it gives you that plan B, right? You're able to create that stuff. And even though I'm not at the financial freedom number, I have the ability. I have some income coming in from real estate, but also I have the knowledge and the understanding that I can create that in the future. So I think that's such a powerful thing to understand.
So for people that want to connect with you, they want to learn more about you. I know you have a show, which I've been on and I really enjoyed. But is that the best way to find you, is to find Wrestling with Real Estate on YouTube or podcasting apps, or is there a better way?
The best place to go is to wrestlingwithrealestate.com. There's all the links to the social media stuff, to my email, to the podcast, to the YouTube. Right. So wrestlingwithrealestate.com.
Okay. And Brian's a giant fan of WWE, and I don't know if you know this or not. And he has insisted that I ask for you to sign something for him and send it to him. You're going to do that for us?
Of course.
Preferably one of your, headshots or something, because that would be really entertaining to me.
It'll go right back there on my wall.
That's right.
I'll frame it for you.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, listen, Barry, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really, really enjoyed having you. It's been great getting to know you over the last year.
Immensely.
All right.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you again soon.
I will get back to you guys with what we're going to do to get Barry rescheduled. And I accidentally made the backdrop go away when I meant to do this. Bye.